Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to return to Estonia, which as we know is a very good craft beer country these days. There's a hell of a lot of little microbreweries popping up in Estonia at the moment, and my experiences with Estonian beer have so far all been really quite good. So for this review we are going to look at another collaboration beer. So this beer is in fact 1/3 Estonian and 2/3 Russian, and oddly enough the two Russian breweries that are involved here are ones that I reviewed for you quite recently after my friend brought me back some beers from Russia, and the Estonian brewery you've seen me review maybe 2 or 3 things from already, so looking forward to this one. And this is another beer that was released of course on the 20th of September 2019 through the small partiers in Systembolaget here in Sweden. So for this review we are going to head to Tartu, the second city of Estonia and home to the country's oldest university, and we're having a taste of another beer from Puhäste Pruulikoda, and this one is the Trinity in black, which comes in at 12.5% ABV, an Imperial Stout as it says on the bottle, and it is in collaboration with Zagovor Brewery, who come from Moscow, and AF Brew from St. Petersburg, both in Russia as I mentioned a little minute ago. But this one should be really interesting. They've added a few different things to this. So on this beer they've added tonka beans, cocoa nibs, vanilla and lactose, so it should be a really quite interesting Imperial Stout, this one. All my experiences involving these breweries so far have been very positive, so I think it will be really interesting to see how this beer turns out. And of course, you know, I know that the Russian beers are very good now as well, having tried a few of them, so really curious to see how this one turns out. And as always, I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about all the breweries involved here before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery websites, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Pühaste, Zagovor and from AF Brew. Hopefully I can add more to all 3 of those lists in the fairly near future, but as I've told you before, Russian beers are a little bit difficult to get. Estonian ones are a bit easier. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for both the Estonian beers that I've done for you and one for the Russian beers. Both of those are being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the breweries then, we'll kick off with Puhäste, since these guys are the home brewery if you like, and this beer I think was brewed in Estonia. So Puhäste, as I told you earlier, are based in Tartu in southeastern Estonia, and the company was founded back in 2016 by Eero Mander, Lauri Aidaman and Ular Kaljurand. So Lauri comes from a background in IT, while Ular is a businessman that specialised in running restaurants and bars, and Eero was apparently a home brewer for a number of years, starting back in 2011 when he brewed at his summer house in Pühaste, and he released his first commercial beers in 2014 under the name Blessed Virgin, which proved to be really quite successful. But these guys started out as a gypsy brewery, and they brewed in various other breweries around Estonia before deciding in 2015 to set up their own brewery. So they opened this brewery in September of 2016, which can be found in Tea Street in the southeast of Tartu, and they've already expanded their fermentation capacity due to high demand. And when I made the notes on this brewery, they were producing around 3,500 hectolitres of beer per year, but from what I understand they have actually upgraded that capacity even further. So yeah, as I say, this brewery is one of about maybe 3 or 4 that you can get quite easily out of Estonia. I mean, we get a lot of Pohjola in Copenhagen and things like that. Puhäste, of course, appear every so often through Systembolaget here in Sweden. Untappd you can find fairly regularly as well, and I think there's also Pühaste Pruulikoda as well, you can get their beers every so often, mainly in the winter actually. So we do get a couple of the Estonian breweries. I'm not sure how many craft breweries there are in total in Estonia. I would guess it's maybe somewhere in the region of like 100, 150 or something like that. You know, Estonia, it's 1.2 million people if I remember correctly, correctly, but there's only about 1 million or so ethnic Estonians. There's a good Russian population in Estonia too, which is quite interesting. But a lovely country, somewhere that I really recommend that you go. The Estonians are very, very nice people, very warm and hospitable, so definitely go and check it out. Pärnu, Tallinn and Tartu are all very, very nice places, and generally it's just a really nice country to go. And if you're from Western Europe, it is a little bit cheaper and you'll get good craft beer as well, so always positive things. But a very, you know, a country that's growing very fast economically as well, so do make sure you go and visit Estonia. But that's all you really need to know about Puhäste at the moment. If you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram. Those two will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. And of course, if you check out the Rate Beer and Untappd pages, that's probably your best source of information about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, on to the Russian side of things then, and we'll move on to Zagovor first. And as I say, this is a brewery that I encountered quite recently because a friend brought me back some of their beers. So the Zagovor Brewery was founded back in 2014, and they can be found in Moscow. And apparently a lot of the breweries in Russia started up when the Russian ruble collapsed back in 2014, and this was due to sanctions and various other things. We won't get too far into the politics of it, but basically this meant that imported beers became very, very expensive in Russia, so they decided to start brewing their own. So the brewery was originally founded by 6 people, although one of them left being active in the brewery to return to his career in medicine, and another went on to work in television, but he does still play a role in some of the sales aspects of the brewery as well. But the 4 founders that are still active in the brewery are Gregory Maleev, Alexander Maltsev, Alexander Sasha Korobkov, and also Vadim Gurov as well. But the friends apparently met through music, and they played in various different bands, travelled around, toured together, and drank beer together. But on their travels in America and Australia, they encountered craft beer for the first time, and they decided that they wanted to brew their own when they got back to Russia, and this took them down the home brewing route, and of course this is where they started to make their name. But initially the brewery were contract brewing their beers, but they opened up their own brewery in early 2018, and all the equipment that they have is Russian built actually. And when I first researched this brewery, I didn't know that there was a Russian company doing brewing equipment and things like that. Obviously you've got steel fabricators and things, but you know, to find a specialist brewing equipment company in Russia, I was quite surprised at that because of how young the beer scene is. But the equipment that they have comes from 3 different companies. This is the Brew Success Group in St. Petersburg, Nomas, who are from a little place called Mias, and also Pintcraft, who come from Voronezh. Sasha Korobkov is the head brewer, and they started off brewing 180 hectolitres per month, but they have the capacity to brew around 300 hectolitres of beer per month. As of September 2019, when I made these notes, this brewery produced over 130 different types of beers. They have an association with the Rule Tap Room in Moscow as well, and also the Dogma Bottle Shop. From what I understand, the owners of the Dogma Bottle Shop are good friends with the guys from Zagovor Brewery. And they kind of consider themselves as being the Zagovor bottle shop, if you like. And the word Zagovor itself literally translates into English as conspiracy. So essentially this brewery's name is the Conspiracy Brewery. But a brewery that's very well regarded in Russia, very good when it comes to New England IPAs, and one that you definitely need to check out if you get the chance. I've noticed that they've been collaborating a lot with breweries like Amundsen and obviously Pühaste as well. They're starting to collaborate with more and more European breweries. So hopefully this is the start of us starting to see more Russian beers. My first encounter with Russian beer, of course, I think was back in 2016 when Malmö Brewing Company had a little Russian beer festival. I was very, very impressed with the standard actually. So you know, the standard of Russian beer is good, and hopefully the EU or something can do a trade deal with Russia, and we can start to get Russian things a little bit more easily, because there are some good things, there are some really good products in Russia that would be nice to see in the EU. So that's all you need to know about Zagovor Brewery. Once again, if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and of course the Rate Beer and Untappd pages are there for all the different beers that they do. On to the last of the Russian breweries then, AF Brew, who are another very good brewery. So AF Brew are based in St. Petersburg. They were founded back in 2012 by Nikita Filipov, Dmitry Buldakov, and also Artem Kolchikov as well. But they had previously worked for Baltica, and they were really interested in experimental beer, and they actually said there was a bit of a witch hunt for them when they started brewing their beers. They were only brewing very small 500 litre batches, and because they were still working for Baltica, they were actually given an appointment with the CEO of the company, who told them they had to stop immediately brewing these little small batches of beer because it was a threat to the company. And you know, Baltica, as we know, is a massive kind of conglomerate, if you like, a Russian conglomerate, but they were determined to stop these guys actually brewing their small beers. But these guys started off as a gypsy brewery, or a contract brewer, a nomad brewer, however you want to call them, and so they brewed their beers in a lot of other places before they eventually built their their own brewery, which they opened up in November of 2016. This brewery also has an on-site tap room, and these guys also own the Red Rum bar in the city as well. But the AF in the name actually stands for Anti-Factory, and they say that they chose this because they liked how drinking craft beer could give you a little bit of an escape from the pressures of everyday life. So that was the idea behind the name, apparently. And as of September 2019, when I'm filming this review, these guys have produced over 150 different types of beers, according to Untappd. So yeah, again, that's all you really need to know about AF Brew for the moment. Like I say, both of the Russian breweries in this collaboration seem to be trying to get their name out there a little bit more. Again, I think AF Brew have done a collaboration with they've done a collaboration with Lervig, which I reviewed for you recently on the channel, and they've done a couple of other things as well. I'm sure I've seen these guys do a collaboration brew with Amundsen up in Norway as well. So it's quite cool again to see this brewery trying to get their name out there a little bit more. And as I say, hopefully we start to see more of the Russian craft beers coming out through Europe. But yeah, that's it really. That's all you need to know about all the breweries involved here. Like I say, check out their Facebook pages, their Instagrams, their websites, and of course the Untappd and Rate Beer pages are good for telling you all the different types of beers that they do. But yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer then. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is a 12.5% Imperial Stout. It's brewed with tonka beans, cocoa nibs, vanilla and lactose, and it came out through Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 20th of September 2019. So yeah, really looking forward to this one. Estonian beer, as I say, I have very good experiences with, and Russian beer, I'm really starting to discover exactly what's going on there. But there you can see the artwork in this one is really quite similar. There you can see the three kind of hooded figures at the back there, Trinity in black. I think that's a pretty cool name, I have to admit. So yeah, thumbs up to Puhäste for coming up here with something really cool. It says on the side here, Imperial Stout seasoned with tonka beans, vanilla and cinnamon, actually, so I've told you lies here. I must have got the wrong thing. So yeah, sorry, it's tonka beans, vanilla and cinnamon that's in this one. So it said on Untappd that it was vanilla and lactose that they'd added into it, but we'll see how we get on with it. There you can see the standard Puhäste bottle cap. But yeah, 12.5% Imperial Stout, 50 IBUs apparently. So without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. A 300, and is this a 330 or a 375? Yeah, 330 milliliter bottle. So let's get it out and we will get on with the tasting then. Really curious to see how this beer turns out. But yeah, as you can see, it is pretty full actually. So we'll get it out and into the glass, and you can see just how thick this thing is as you pour it out, and the head on that is going to be absolutely crazy. We'll leave a little bit in the bottle for the moment, but yeah, just look at that. That is mental, and that head isn't forming too much, but it's just fading away to be very thin foamy there. But you can see from that little foamy ring on the edge of the glass, that's one of the darkest heads you are ever going to come across on an Imperial Stout. I mean, just look at that. And I mean, I can smell some of the lovely kind of sweet notes coming off this just as we bring it out. But if I hold the light up to this one is, this is a very, very dark sort of rosewoody, ebony kind of colour, this beer. There is a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it. But I mean, overall, it's kind of what you would expect from an Imperial Stout. Like I say, one of the darkest kind of heads that I've ever seen on the beer, even though that head didn't last for very, very long. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones just kind of making their way up towards where the head should be in this one. But overall, nothing particularly surprising about this beer when you consider that it's an Imperial Stout. It looks exactly as you might expect. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on then. Oh, that smells really good. Straight away, you can smell the tonka beans in this one, and it's really interesting actually. Tonka beans, I've talked about these in a couple of reviews before. They're a very popular kind of cooking ingredient, but apparently there are things in them which are poisonous. I remember I talked about the chemistry of tonka beans in one of my videos before. I think they're from, if I remember right, they're from like South America somewhere, but they have a chemical in them that is actually poisonous if you take too much of it. So you have to be very careful with how you cook them, from what I remember. But they're a very popular ingredient in some food in Latin America, from what I remember. But they give you this really beautiful flavour. It's almost a lovely smoothness, and at the same time it almost gives you this kind of vanilla, woody type quality to your beer. They're a really brilliant ingredient, both to cook with apparently, but also to put in imperial stouts like this. The first encounter I had with them, I'm sure, was with one of the Pühaste Brewery beers. I think it was called Tonkinilla Mangorange or something like that, and then they used it as well in a later barley wine, from what I remember. So it's a beautiful ingredient, that, and you can smell these straight away. I mean, it gives you this lovely sort of smooth, kind of spicy quality to the beer just underneath. It's almost a little bit woody, but you can kind of smell it is a little bit almost like rice or something like this. It's almost just a little bit like that kind of consistency, like a sort of slightly spicy rice. So it smells lovely. The cinnamon kind of plays into that sort of spicy side of the tonka beans as well. So it's a really good ingredient actually to choose, and just to choose and to kind of let them mix up together. I think that's really, really quite cool actually. But at the same time, with that kind of, it's quite a spicy smelling imperial stout, this one, but at the same time you do get a lot of sweetness out of it too. There's definitely a sort of milky chocolate quality to this one. You've got some nice sort of oaky, woody qualities as well. I'm getting a little bit of vanilla out of this one. Like I say though, it doesn't say on the bottle that they've added vanilla, but on Untappd or wherever it was, I think it was actually, it might have actually even been on the Systembolaget website, it did say that they'd added vanilla into the brew with this one. So it's a really interesting combination of things. You've got a very, very interesting balance here between a sort of spicy kind of quality, spicy but also quite smooth at the same time. The cinnamon and the tonka beans coming together. You've got a lot of kind of vanilla quality in there, some nice almost oaky, well maybe not oaky, maybe definitely a woody character of some description, and you've also got a little bit of a kind of sweet chocolate in there. It's like a sort of 50-60% more milky chocolate quality that comes out of this beer. I'm not really getting too much in the way of brown sugar. There is a little bit of an almost kind of caramel, like a sort of caramel wafery note out of this one. But there is definitely a bit of brown sugar presence there, but it's not kind of dominating the it's not really dominating the aroma really. On the hoppy side of things, I mean, there's a little touch of earthiness there. You can pick out a little bit of grassiness to the beer as well. And of course that's the standard thing. I'm guessing they'll have used like Challenger or Summit or maybe a bit of Williamette or something as the hop in this one, so you will get a little bit of a kind of grassy floral quality out of this one, as well as a bit of earthiness. On the fruity side of things, again it's quite standard there. It's got a little bit of a sort of blackcurranty, blackberry note, a little bit of a kind of juicy figginess, and maybe a little bit of a sort of slightly richer plummy note. I don't think it's got a kind of sharp raisin or anything like that to it, this one, but it's a lovely aroma on this beer. And as I say, if you've never encountered a tonka bean beer before, I highly recommend that you read up a little bit on tonka beans and just and enjoy that aspect of it too. It's a really very, very unique kind of flavour actually. It's very interesting how how all of it kind of mixes together, and I think this beer will be really quite cool as well. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and just see how we go on. As I always say, take a bit of time and just enjoy the aroma before you get stuck into it. But this one is the Trinity in Black, a collaboration Imperial Stout at 12.5% from Puhäste Pruulikoda in Tartu in Estonia, and brewed in collaboration with Zagovor Brewery, who come from Moscow, and AF Brew from St. Petersburg, both of whom come from Russia. There you can see their symbols just on the side of the bottle there. But yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and just see how we get on. Slange, skål, terviseks, na zdrowie. Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful beer. Where to start with this one? First off, I mean, I think I only paid about 50 crowns for this or something like that. This beer, for what it is, it was really, really quite cheap. And I mean, Estonia, when it comes to the craft beers, it is pretty cheap there. And Poland was the same. You get some really good quality craft beers in dog's going crazy again. You get some really good quality craft beers in Russia Estonia and Poland and things like that, and they're very cheap compared to how they are in Western Europe. But this is a beautiful beer. This gets a big thumbs up from me. I think this is probably the best beer that I've had from Pühaste so far. And I mean the fear of Zafir that I had from AF Brew was a very, very good Imperial Stout as well. So I'm not surprised at how good this beer's turned out when you consider that AF Brewer involved. Pühaste, I think most of the beers I've had from them before have been on the lighter end of the spectrum, but they've all been really good. Zagovor are very good at New England IPAs, and I'm not surprised again. 3 very good breweries involved in this one, regardless of how you look at it. But this is just a beautiful, beautiful beer. So let's try and break the flavour of this one down then. This one's going to be a little bit of a longer review, I feel, so apologies for that. But straight across the middle of your palate you get this really nice sort of smooth woodiness to the beer. You can just feel that, and the further you go into the aftertaste you can feel the middle of your palate just dry out a little bit. And it's interesting because you do have this roasty black malt kind of character to it, and it's definitely a black malt. You can really feel that drying out the middle of your palate, but at the same time it's not quite as edgy, if you like, as a black malt. It's a little bit more like a very charred dark chocolate or something like that. It's really interesting how that whole thing sort of goes together. That's a very interesting dynamic you've got in the middle of the palate too, and I suspect that the cinnamon is actually kind of mixing in with that. It feels as if the cinnamon's almost a little bit like toasted as well. You can really feel that cinnamon flavour pushing its way out of this beer the further you go into the aftertaste. But that is really, really damn good. So as I say, a big thumbs up to all 3 of the breweries involved here. They've done an awesome job of this. You always get some cracking beers out of Estonia. I got this one and the Pohjola one that was in the small party, so you will see that reviewed in a couple of videos time too. But this is lovely. This is probably the best beer that I've had involving Puhäste, and it's difficult to say whether it's better or Fear of the Zafir. This one's definitely more of a roasty toasty Imperial Stout, whereas the Fear of Zafir was a more kind of sweet stout, like an Omnipollo type thing, whereas with Zagovor, this is the first beer I'm having from them at the dark end of the spectrum. So yeah, really interesting. But yeah, the way that this beer dries out is really quite unique. In the beginning of the flavour, it really is quite sweet actually. But in the middle of the palate, you can really feel that nice kind of chocolatey quality to the beer. You can feel the cocoa nibs kind of coming out. And if you move further forward from the centre of your palate, you do get a little bit of a vanilla quality. There's maybe a little bit of a nuttiness to this beer as well, but you can feel the tonka beans in there. The tonka beans will be contributing some of those woody flavours. If you go to the front corners of your palate and move in a little bit, you will start to get some of those sort of woody undertones to the beer, but it's a bit more nutty towards the front of the palate, a little bit of vanilla in there as well. But the spiciness, this is quite a spicy Imperial Stout actually. This would be a really nice one, I think, to release at Christmas time. I think this really reminds me of a good number of these Christmas Imperial Stouts that I've had before, the slightly more spicy kind of thing. So a bit surprised about that actually. But as they say, you know, tonka beans, it's a very experimental ingredient that works very, very well in these beers, and the tonka beans are giving the beer some of that spice, some of the woody note, and also a little bit of the almost kind of vanilla-like qualities as well. So it's a really interesting kind of thing you've got going on in this beer. In the very centre of your palate, like I say, you get some of the chocolatey notes. There maybe is a little bit of an almost sweet caramel flavour in the middle of the palate too, and that'll be the kind of boozy notes. I mean, at 12.5%, this beer is a bit of a beast. There's no hiding from that. Yeah, definitely a little bit of a nice kind of brown sugary note in there, but you get the sweet chocolate as you move out from the very kind of centre of the palate as well. I really like how everything is going together in this one. The way that this beer dries out is really quite unique as well. This is definitely more a roasty toasty Imperial Stout rather than being quite a sweet one, although in fairness it does actually start off in the first part of the flavour. It's quite sweet, but it really dries out quite considerably. In the back corners of the palate you've got a nice kind of roasty toasty quality there. It's you can feel that builds a good bridge between the way that the beer dries out and also the hoppy side of things. You've got a nice little bit of a strong earthiness in the back corners of the palate. As you move further forward, it maybe becomes just a little touch herbal, but you can feel the earthiness just gradually fading away. There's a little touch of a floral aromaticity to this one on the front corners of the palate, and then it's a little bit lighter and grassy around the front edge of the palate too, but you can feel some of that floral and earthy quality just spreading forward there. Behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get some of these nice fruity flavours that you expect from the hops in this beer. So let's focus on that now. Yeah. I would say in the beginning with this beer, on the fruity side of things, you do get a nice little bit of a slightly sharp, sort of almost raisiny type quality to this one, but the further you go into the aftertaste, it really is going to evolve to be more blackcurranty, more more blackcurranty, blackberries, nice little bit of what do you call it? I would say a little bit of a kind of figgy quality in there as well, actually. So the kind of fruity sweetness that you get with this beer gives you a little bit of contrast in there too. So yeah, nice little bit of a kind of sharper berry, kind of sharpery note in the beginning, a little bit of raisin. Then you can feel the whole front of your tongue it just becomes a little bit more oily and juicy. Then you start to get these figgy flavours that I was talking about. There's maybe a little bit of a juicy kind of plum in there as well. But you start to get the more kind of blackberry-ish, blackcurrant and kind of figgy flavours out of it too. But overall, it's just beautiful how all these flavours kind of go together. The thing that lingers into the aftertaste, like I say, is some of that spiciness and some of the juicy fruitiness. The earthiness kind of sits there as well. But this is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful beer. And it kind of just shows you, the quality of all the three breweries involved here is really pretty damn good. So big thumbs up to all three of them, and it's been nice to taste this one for you. In terms of the mouthfeel, I think definitely a full-bodied beer. The carbonation's very smooth. The mouthfeel overall is big and oily. It tells you on the bottle that it's 50 IBUs. I don't need to kind of guess. I actually probably would have thought it was a little bit higher than that. I probably would have guessed like 60 or so if I was tasting this one without knowing. The malt base, like I say, quite roasty and spicy in some ways. This is one of those beers that really dries out. In the beginning it starts off quite sweet, then it becomes really kind of nice and dry and toasty, and then you've got some nice juicy fruity qualities in there as well, and the hoppy bitterness really kind of helps play out with that as well. I do think more of the bitterness though is coming from the malt base in this one and the way it dries out, rather than being simply from the hops. But overall, it's a beautiful beer, this one, and I'm glad I was able to review this for you. So big thanks to Systembolaget for bringing this one through. This is definitely one of the best beers I think that I've had out of the small partiers. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Trinity in black, an Imperial Stout at 12.5% with tonka beans, cinnamon and was it cocoa nibs it said on the bottle? Yeah, tonka beans, vanilla and cinnamon. But yeah, I don't know where I'm getting this thing that it had cocoa nibs in it. I'm sure on the Systembolaget website it said it had cocoa nibs. I'm not sure, but it does have a big chocolatey presence nonetheless. But a beautiful beer, this one. One that you definitely need to try if you get the chance. You can still get it here in Sweden. Otherwise, keep an eye out for this. This one was really good, and it's cool to see the Estonian and Russian breweries collaborating. So yeah, hopefully we start to see more Russian beers throughout Europe, and again, more Estonian beers would never go amiss as well. But thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pühaste and Zagovor and AF Brew as well. I'm sure I'll return to these breweries at some point in the near future, and I hope you've enjoyed this review. Make sure you check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Until the next time, Slanja just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Slanja, skål, TRV6, na zdrowie.